I'm going to call the meeting to order, and we'll start with roll call. Lisa Hunt.
Here.
Aaron Lau.
Here.
Taryn Babb.
Here.
Okay, not here yet. Everyone responded yes, so I'll give it a little time. Paul O'Rourke. Here. John Reagan.
Here.
And Brooke Webb.
Here.
We have the meeting minutes from the August 6th meeting. Do we have any comments or motion to approve?
I'll motion to approve.
And a second.
Second.
Any comments, questions? All in favor? Aye. Next up, we have our citizens' comments. Registered comments. Is this Karen Russo, 224 Dell Avenue?
Oh. Beyond the business.
Okay, gotcha. We'll start with Marty Basic.
Good evening, everyone. Marty Basic, 201 Outlook Drive. I'm sure y'all are sick of hearing about my policy at this point, so I'm going to talk about something else tonight. I live on the corner of Outlook Drive and Lebanon Hills Drive, and if you're familiar with that area, Lebanon Hills Drive is a parallel street to Washington Road. It's a very long parallel street. And the result of that, with it being in such close proximity to the high school, is that it's a perfect avenue for people to essentially circumvent the traffic on Washington Road and drop their kids off to walk to the high school and then come back around. This leads to easily over 100 cars per morning. It's also a very critical walking route for children walking to school, and so it becomes extremely dangerous because it becomes essentially a second appendage of Washington Road. It's just like any overflow from there goes to Lebanon Hills Drive. And so what I'm asking for as a result is there are 3 entrances to Lebanon Hills as a plan. The first 2 are the ones that are typically used to circumvent the traffic on Washington Road. And so my ask would be a no right turn sign at both of those entrances, and that is Park entrance. The name of the other road is escaping me right now, but the 2 first entrances. And this is such a limited window that it would only need to be restricted between 7:30 and 8 a.m. on school days. This, I think, would limit the amount of interference with residents of the neighborhood, allowing people to still come in from a left turn and from a right turn on Main Entrance Drive, the 3rd entrance that I was talking about. It's such a specific action that this is specifically targeted. Additionally, I've talked to my neighbors about this and they're very supportive of this. There's a precedent in this area as well. In 2017, there was a movement from my neighbors long before I moved there to add no parking signs to this neighborhood because it was utilized as a secondary parking lot to the high school when it was under construction. And this was piloted as a program for 3 months. It was very effective, and so they rolled it out permanently, and it still exists today. It works extremely well. And I see this sort of as a second act to that. That really reduced the amount of interference in my neighborhood from the school in terms of parking, but now there's the traffic flow that comes from Washington Road. And so I think this is kind of like the second piece of that movement to close it off and essentially finish the job that was done in 2017. Yeah, I think that was about all my thoughts. Yeah, Commissioner Flynn.
Can you reiterate just, I had to pull up a map to
Yeah.
understand what you were.
Yeah, it would be, I wish I could like project a map up
Making
here.
the right turn onto Crestview Manor.
Crestview Manor and Park entrance are the 2 entrances.
Or Park entrance, I'm sorry, main entrance.
Main entrance is unrestricted, yeah. So it's coming from the south, it's those 2 right here.
Northbound traffic on Washington Road, no right turn onto Crestview Manor or Park entrance.
Correct.
I see.
So then they can't make the loop through Lebanon Hills to drop.
Got it.
If they went down to main entrance and made the right, they would just have to go all the way back to Park entrance to complete the loop.
Right.
Yeah, and at that point, there's really no incentive to drive all the way down to main entrance because you're through the traffic. So.
And the idea is just that they're just trying to avoid the light at main entrance drive.
They're trying to avoid the backup of the school zone, on Washington Road, exactly.
There's probably a pretty significant queue from Cochrane to Washington Road waiting for that left. So people bail and find path of least resistance into the neighborhood.
So you're saying people aren't dropping off, they're just using that as a way to avoid.
It's both. Some people drop off and turn around and come back through Lebanon Hills, some keep going. And just use that as a way to avoid it, because there is a right turn arrow light also at main entrance. And so they do get a light to turn out of there, which is convenient as well, if you're trying to circumvent.
Really right turn out there.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes. Yep.
So, I mean, a couple thoughts. I know this is the follow-up segment of the PennDOT project that's gonna go from Cochrane, I believe, to Gilkison. And there's a PennDOT project, but also the other PennDOT project ending at Cochrane from Pioneer, or I mean, farther than Pioneer, but and I know we have that transportation plan, but not quite sure. I'd like to know all those things to make the proper recommendation. I know it's a continuation of the other one, but just other thoughts of how do we logistically move forward with this request? Part of me wants to throw it in the active transportation plan. Certainly happy to hear other thoughts.
What's the process in looking at something like this to then see like what alternative routes people will take? I mean, because it feels like if you know, if we do this, they're gonna, so I'm just curious about like what that process is, because I mean, being around that area every morning myself, I see all of the things, including people just dropping their kids off in the street, so.
Yeah, I mean, it's such your time, Marty. I think part of the process is we've got 3 types of roads, and that's kind of limiting in what they do. And then also we haven't, the active transportation plan in my mind is gonna look at where and how should people be moving and what the priorities are for those streets. And I don't, if anyone can correct me if I'm wrong, we don't really have priorities for streets other than the 3 street typologies. So I'm hoping through that process, we can really look at that, because it happens almost every street we do traffic calming on. It's just to the next one. So it's like, how can we zoom farther out and be like, how should people be moving here? Are they driving to the school and doing this because Washington Road is a terrible road to walk along? Possibly. Yeah. Go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna say, yeah, again, I don't know how to judge this, right? I mean, these are all valid questions, and without, you know, a deeper study, it's hard to say anything. So for me, that's to your point, it makes sense to kind of punt this to the active transportation plan, but it also justifies that how do we keep track of all these requests to fit into kind of this broader dialogue of once we get to here, we will look at these things. Right? I don't know that we have a formal list of requests that have been made that aren't necessarily, and the other thing I would say is, you know, how do we, and this isn't for you specifically, Marty, it's more broad, it's how do we kind of understand threshold, one person requesting, you know, versus, you know, a list of 40 people who have signed a petition and say, we want this studied, you know, are different scales. You know, so how do we think about that also, right? So just kind of to frame, not this immediate, but kind of these broader questions.
And I agree with all of that. In my experience, finding alternative drop-off spots for the schools has become a sporting event or a hobby, or you know, however you want to term it. I mean, it's been a long, ongoing. And you learn from the parents ahead of you, and you pass those along, and the go zones are imperfect, for sure.
No, I think that's a data request from the ATP, whoever the ATP consultants are. Have we been tracking traffic calming requests, or do we keep capturing them? Because I know there's some that we get and it's like, oh, the study happened within the last 3 years, so we're not going to do anything. But I don't know if we have any database of where we've captured those. I mean, it's an exercise in digging through probably minutes across the last. There's some, I mean, some of them are still the same, like the same requests keep coming up, but and I know we have the comp plan highlighted a lot of these. I've already flagged Marty's comments in a map that I've been tracking across the community when people bring things up, so there's a lot of places. I think the ATP is a good starting place, because then we're at least looking at the system as a whole. And I know we're looking at with Dormont, we're looking at it as a whole because we share Washington Road, and there's like that Washington Road, if everyone wasn't driving from Upper St. Clair to the city on Washington Road, maybe it's not as bad. Maybe you stay on one. There's so many factors at play that I think trying to throw like, oh, let's throw some right turn signs might not solve our issue. It could just shift it somewhere else, like Aaron said. Gotcha.
Just for clarification, is the concern just volume or is it volume and speed?
Is both from my perspective, but again, like I'm just one person. Then my threshold for what seems fast to me might be different, but I haven't measured it. But for me, it's both.
I mean, maybe as a start, Marty, and within the existing processes, just going through the traffic calming process and making a request. I guess you would ask about Lebanon Hills Drive, which I don't, does it zoom far enough out to capture how people are coming through there? And this would be a good time, if you can bring the petition forward, a good time to maybe throw some speed data collectors out there, because it's school time. So it's gonna be your highest volume, it's gonna be most likely your highest speeds. Sorry.
Yeah, I just figured since it was a long time ago, but the 2017 action that was done, I figured it with municipal resources being limited, if we could recycle that, I didn't know if there was anything available that we could pull from that instead of doing an entirely new study.
Good question.
But that was sort of just my thinking on that.
Yeah, just my transportation experience before 2020 and after 2020 are very different things.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
That was done for a specific reason too, because the high school parking was not available. So that's the reason people were parking over there, the kids were parking over there, to walk into school. That's why that whole study was done for that area.
But at least with the new petition, we could get new data, and I would imagine that data could at least roll into that transportation plan.
Thanks everyone for listening. I appreciate it.
And so you said Karen Russo is gonna go into new business?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Don't think it was online. So Andrew, or Commissioner Flynn's gonna give a more expanded effort on the ATP, the active transportation plan that's coming. We keep talking about it, so it is coming, and I'll let him go through that. I wanted to highlight something for folks to put on their radar. It's the Week Without Driving, and this is from September 30th to October 6th, and it's through America Walks. They urge elected officials, public officials, transportation professionals, organizations, advocates, and individuals to participate in the Week Without Driving. We want those who have the option to drive regularly to understand the barriers and challenges that non-drivers face when trying to move safely in their communities, and work with non-drivers to create better communities for all. So I know I've got it on my calendar. I believe I'm going to sign up. My wife's added to our group calendar. Are you kidding? Like, are you joking? It's like, it's one of those weeks where it's not, you're not going to get in a car. It's asking for a ride. It's asking for, so I would just go look at America Walks Week Without Driving. It's a really interesting program, but it does bring exposure to different elements that are happening. There's been a construction project ongoing on Cochrane Road. The contractors have put the signs directly in the middle of the sidewalk. Who gets that request? Why, they drive to the site, they park on the sidewalk. I asked the people around the schools when they pull up on the sidewalk to put the construction signs on, hey, could you please pull off the sidewalk? It's like, well, I don't want to get hit. I'm like, well, I don't want the kids walking to school to have to walk in the road. You have flashing lights and a safety vest and are an adult, not a child. So I think it's a really important week. Like Pittsburgh is calling on local advocates, and they spoke to almost 30% of Americans do not have access to a private vehicle or choose not to drive or something else. And when we're designing just for cars, we're limiting 30% of the population in terms of our thought process. So just really important aspect there. And then another fact, I want to really advocate for street trees. One of ours is probably going to be sacrificed to the tree gods, but a car in our neighborhood, a single occupancy or a single vehicle crash, just T-boned a tree. Thankfully, our neighbor had just finished unloading their groceries. If the tree had not been there, they probably would have been impacted in this collision. So speaking power to street trees and their criticality, not all of them are in great shape. They are kind of nature's bollards. So that's all I have, other than we have, and I guess this might be a good opportunity. We have Vivian Law. our student liaison. Do you want to say a little about yourself?
Sure, yeah, should I just like stand?
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Vivian Law. I'm a junior from the high school and I was recently selected to be the junior board member of this board. And I feel like I'm really excited because I'm learning how to drive right now. So once I get my license, I can start using these roads and, you know, implementing everything that and one thing that I'm really passionate about is like sustainability. So I feel like something that maybe in the future, like towards this year, I want to like talk about maybe or focus on a little bit is like, I don't know about bike lanes or stuff like that, or trees or stuff to do with sustainability, climate change, that kind of thing. But I mean, the thing about Mount Lebanon is kind of hilly, so I don't know about bikes, but I'm gonna keep thinking about it because there's a lot of things we can definitely implement. I feel like that could sort of go in that direction because I've always been passionate about like climate change and CO2 emissions, that kind of thing. And I feel like the transportation board is definitely like the most important one in Mount Lebanon that could sort of address that. So yeah, that's me.
Awesome. Well, happy to have you, Vivian. Welcome.
Thank you.
And then one final thought in that direction, and I'll pass it on to the commission liaison, but just a fact that in 1969, about half of all students walked or biked to school, and that number, and this is in America, or in the United States, that number is fewer than 15% of all school trips are now made by walking and biking. So we've gone down drastically. And most of those trips are made within a half-mile schools. That's not, even with topography, that's not that far for those that are able-bodied. So there's other factors at play and blockages to that. So I think investigating that and solving it helps those go zones. If the go zones are not restricted, or meant just for those that truly need it, those that don't have sidewalks, those can't walk, it improves life for everybody. So that's all I have. I'll pass it to the commissioner.
Thank you. So I'll just follow up on yours. I actually did sign up for the week without driving. As you all can imagine, I have my e-bike. The e-bike works on that.
Oh, yeah,
So the action transportation plan work is in flight. We have interviewed 2 advisory firms that are that submitted for the action transportation plan. The staff from both municipalities and elected officials from both municipalities will meet tomorrow to discuss our opinions, our perspectives on the consultants. I will say that, yeah, I think at least from Mount Lebanon's perspective, that there's pretty strong consensus as to which consultant everybody likes. We'll see what Dormont says. And hopefully it won't take too long and we can make a recommendation and get that consultant signed up so that the process can get underway. So active transportation plan, as Seth has said, right, there's a lot going on there. We're putting on a lot of eggs in that basket. And I'm hopeful that it will really set a stage to help this board kind of frame a lot of future thinking and processes that we're trying to put in place now. So that's all good. Other than that, the municipality, obviously a lot going on with school back. I've been getting lots of requests around, traffic calming, speeds, police parked in the wrong place. I won't say who sends those messages to me. But again, as everybody knows, this time of year, Mount Lebanon is always hectic because people are reestablishing patterns. Talked to a lot of crossing guards. The ones at Cedar Salem are extremely happy. I think I talked to 3 of them that have been down there and they're all ecstatic with the changes. So again, small incremental changes make a big difference, but we will continue to see how things progress. I think that's all I have, unless anybody has questions about other municipal items.
So with the active transportation plan and the consultant, you guys are gonna vet out, is that budgeted or? How
It is budgeted, yeah. So Mount Lebanon budgeted, I believe 85,000 and Dormont budgeted 25,000, if I recall correctly. I was actually told by another elected official that there was money from the county available. So Mr. McMeans has reached out to the county to see if we can bolster that number, because it's really, for what we'd like them to do, it's really not enough. There's a lot of work to do there, so hopefully we can add some grant monies to that project. But yeah, but the two municipalities have budgeted, so it's ready to go, as soon as we sign somebody.
Ben says they had, this was from Dormont put in 35, so.
Oh, is it 35?
Yeah.
Okay.
But and I had an opportunity to look at both submissions and both qualified candidates, but kind of the cost of doing business is a little bit higher than the 120,000 that's currently budgeted. If we want to get a plan that's implementable, and I think both can provide that. So if the county is willing to pitch in, that's great, because usually the county, you know, there's a lot of other municipalities that are doing active transportation plans, but they do it for like 30,000. You don't really get anything for 30,000. Like you get a couple ideas. I think the intent, hopefully with the results, is something that we can, you know, with Dormont or without Dormont or together, seek out additional funding to actually build this stuff. So that's the hope and direction.
So yeah, just in context, right, to Seth's point about the 30,000, yeah, that will get you like one example project type of scope, right? Again, you look at one street and gives you one example of, you know, how you could change a street, right? And that's really not what we're trying to do. We're trying to create a structural understanding of the entire typology of the municipality and its rights of way, so that we can, you know, it's the teach a person to fish as opposed to giving them a fish type of exercise. We want to learn how to fish so that these guys over here can, you know, replicate over and over and over. So they can go fishing all the time.
Bound for that.
Then there's nothing else for the commissioner. We'll move on to the staff liaison report.
Just have a couple brief things. We had a resident call us with some concerns. Actually, they called the police department first, the traffic division, up at McCully, the two intersections, Marlin West and Marlin East. A lot of people running the stop signs, I guess. And so we had our guys go up the next day, and we actually put stop bars in, and it seems to really help those two intersections. So just a little bit of paint on the road, more in the process as we're working our way through the intersections of adding those to each stop sign. Just makes it more visible. Some of them are on utility poles, and we put some of the reflective strips or ribbons on a lot of the poles too to increase that visibility. But the stop bars seem to work really well, so that seems to calm things down up there. We've been getting quite a few calls, and I understand why, on Alfred Street as far as the closure there at Parsway. The Port Authority PRT is still working. Their engineers still working the problem there. When they reconfigured those and redid the tracks, the crossings there, they changed the geometry because the old tracks didn't have the pieces of what I want to call it, a flat area. Basically, they extended that, so it changed the geometry of the roadway. And the first bus that drove over that, it actually drug and gouged the road. So it was closed shortly after that. Now their engineers are proposing some changes, but we want to make sure that those changes don't impact our right of way outside of the Port Authority's right of way for the LRT system. So we're working with them. We hope to meet with them sometime this week and review what their plan is and get some assurances that it's not going to create other problems that didn't exist before the upgrades went into the system. So hopefully that's going to happen here in the next week or two. And it sounds like they're ready to implement as soon as, you know, everybody's on board with that. But we've been getting questions, and I guess there's been some calls back and forth with folks. And I just want to make sure everybody's aware of why that's still closed. It was supposed to be opened up, I think like the middle end of July, something like that.
Alfred?
Yeah, Alfred Street, right, between Washington Road, right at Parsway there, so.
Nothing's blown up though.
I'm sorry?
The municipality hasn't blown up because it's closed, right?
No, not at all. No. So that's all I have.
Rudy, before you move on, just clarification on painting the stop bars.
Yes,
Is that going to be a general rule, or just
yeah, pretty much.
anytime
That's
there's
what-
a stop sign, you're gonna start painting?
Or we've instructed our guys as we're working around the town to go ahead and throw those in. I think it makes a difference. So,
It most definitely
Yeah.
does. Couldn't agree more. Thank you.
yeah.
Is there something that warrants the addition of the crosswalks as well, or, because we've got the Continental, there's the two lines, and then some that are piano key. I mean, I love the piano keys. I think they,
And that's our standard now too.
I think on North Meadowcroft, when they put it back at Edward, they put, Continental Continental instead of Piano Key, but I think they
That
just
was
restored the
contract.
original.
Yeah, they replaced in kind whatever was there, so, okay, I wasn't aware of that, because we do have the Piano Key down on Beverly at North Meadowcroft.
And it looks I think it looks really
Yeah.
good, like it just, the Piano Key is technically like a high fizz crosswalk, so it just catches the eye more than that Continental, but up in that Continental 2-line, you can't see it.
Just, and since you mentioned that too, one other update, I went back and checked, I wasn't real sure, but I had to check our records. The comment from the last couple of meetings about the Kelso Pembroke crosswalk. That, we did paint that, we painted that actually, June 7th of this year, and it is a Piano Key too, so it's more visible than the parallel lines. Prior to that, there was a point where, if you look back through, Google Street View, there was a point where the PennDOT, that's a state road, they milled that street, they didn't put the crosswalk back in. And prior to that, it was parallel bars before that, but we upgraded that to Piano Keys a couple of years ago, right, Mike? So it has been painted, it's fresh, it's visible, the pedestrian crossing signs are there. On both approaches, they're legible, they're bright, they're not faded. So I just wanted to let everybody know that I followed up after that last meeting and some of those comments that were made about the crosswalk there. That's all I have.
Thank you, Rudy.
Yeah, I will.
So moving into capital, or the subcommittee report, starting with capital, Lisa Herm is gonna give our capital update.
Yep, so we had our first meeting on Monday, August 19th, from 6 to 8 p.m. We actually had it here at the municipal building. From D. In attendance was Seth Davis, Charlotte Ford, Lisa Herm, and Elizabeth McCabe. Our primary agenda was to just sort of figure out what the schedule was going to be. We decided on a quarterly schedule, also knowing that whenever the budget is finalized, we may want to have an additional meeting to meet with you, Rudy, just to kind of go over the budget so we have a better understanding of it. So that might be an additional meeting outside our quarterly schedule. The other thing that we wanted to accomplish during that meeting is to go over the proposed street construction plan that you provided with us. So we went over that. The subcommittee, we reviewed the proposed streets and that matrix that you gave us that showed the linear feet, square feet, and the estimated cost. We also reviewed all of the committee members who did an audit of those streets and looked at all their notes and comments that they had made, and then also took into account anything from any of the citizens that had come prior meetings. For instance, like Kelso, we've had quite a few citizens who have come out and spoke about Kelso. So after reviewing that, the subcommittee felt that really there were 3 projects, and just to be clear too, we were unanimous in what we would like to fund all the streets, like all of those had merit. We, talked through them all. We feel like, yes, if the budget was there, we would give it a green light to all of them. However, the 3 that we really felt that had the most merit was basically first and foremost was Kelso. We would want to fund that 7,692 square feet of Kelso. The second one on our list was Greenhurst Drive, and then added part of that Lakemont Drive that goes from Greenhurst to Lakemont and Lakemont to Kurt. And then the third one was Country Club. It was about 3,200 square feet of that. Those combined projects would account for about 50% of the total budget or the total estimated cost that you gave us. And then it covers about 46 linear square feet and the square feet total, and about 48% of the homes. So I'll send this directly to you, Rudy. Seth, I'm gonna ask you for mine back because I made a typo and I'm gonna fix it. So, and then I'll put that in the folder. And then I'll open it up to the other subcommittee members if they want to also add like some of their thoughts on those three projects.
I'd like to just talk to the Greenhurst section, and I think one of the reasons that we prioritized that was currently the sidewalk ends at the top of Greenhurst at I can't remember this cross street right there. And so what we could accomplish there, because I know in the active transportation plan, there was a lot on connectivity between parks and schools. So the proposed section that Lisa just mentioned would connect the rec center all the way to Hoover. So that would complete a section of sidewalk that would be and it would also connect the high school. It would connect to kind of St. Clair Hospital. But just to have a whole line of sidewalk from the elementary school down to the rec center, I think would be huge.
I'm sorry, so you
Yeah.
mean all of Lakemont or Lakemont up to Larchdale at least?
Larchdale.
Yeah,
Because Larchdale then has a
Has a
sidewalk, so
sidewalk
just to
right
Larchdale. So we'd be doing then Hoover
Half
down.
of Lakemont then, yeah.
Yeah.
I
Basically.
mean, technically on here, it's Lakemont to Lindendale and Lindendale to Summer.
Okay.
We can talk, yeah.
Okay.
Right, yeah.
And then we added the Greenhurst to Larchdale and Larchdale to Kurt, and then kind of stopped at Kurt.
Oh, that's right, we did add the current section, yeah. I think at a minimum though, definitely to Larchdale, just because that sidewalk already exists.
Yeah.
And that would just
That
be
would
like a
tie
really
that in,
nice
yeah.
way to have a one section that's actually connecting many different things together.
School to the
Elementary school to main park, high school.
Yeah.
And again, I think what Elizabeth said as far as if we're really concerned about the elementary schools, that's a really good, powerful story to talk about as far as, you know, making that more walkable for the Hoover school.
Yeah, that portion of Lakemont had, after Kurt, the number of houses kind of drops down, and like we said, I think everybody deserves a sidewalk, but it seemed to get the best bang for the buck, connecting into an integrated system, connecting to Hoover, connecting potentially all the way to the high school, knowing topography is at play, but it seemed to start to expand that network, close some gaps, which was really the merit behind a lot of these.
Yeah, and that bend there is very dangerous, the one that goes out to Bower Hill, just to navigate for if you're a pedestrian trying to walk around that
On
curve.
Lakemont or on Greenhurst?
I think it's whenever Greenhurst
It's the
becomes.
Lakehurst.
Lakehurst.
Well, yeah, the Lakehurst.
Yeah. So to have a sidewalk there would be really useful.
Was that in the, I forget if that was in one of the areas of consideration that might actually be.
Yeah, I think we only reviewed what was already considered.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was only,
It was in there, yeah.
Okay, so that block, that last block is included.
It was on the list
Okay.
that we were originally provided with as far as proposed sidewalk projects.
I couldn't remember.
Yeah.
It's been a while.
So we stuck to that, basically, and again, that's why we kind of took it from Larchdale to Kurt, mainly because there was another 15 homes there and thought that would kind of end the loop, but I do agree, like Larchdale, if you could get to there, that would be a big win.
Oh, so just process, kind of point of process, just to make sure that we're closing loops. If you guys are gonna make this like a formal recommendation, from the subcommittee to the board, I would ask the board to either consider it and vote on it, or just vote on it, but, you know, if it's gonna be a recommendation, there should be a motion, a second, a discussion, and a vote.
Do we have to read it right now? Yeah, I mean, I would like to make a motion to recommend it to the board, full board.
Second.
All in favor?
Discussion.
Any opposed? We'll do.
I mean, that's up to
Discussion, yeah, after the motion, sorry. Any discussion? Guess we can have it. Go ahead, John.
Okay, so to get this straight, it's Kelso, Greenhurst, the northern portion of Lakemont, and Country Club Drive. This is the list.
Yep, let me give you, I did make some handouts, just ignore my first page because I just realized that I had a typo, so. You can bear with me. I'm kind of running out of work today.
And I did some quick calculations, so it represents just under, it's like 46 to 47% of the studied areas of what we were
Look at
recommending.
the second,
Oh, so I'm just already there. I was doing the calculation.
For future reference, if we're planning on proposing something to the board for a vote, so sometimes it might be a good idea to forward, to email everyone someone to review in advance, right? Is that something that happens?
yeah, I agree. Yep. So, basically, if you look at the last chart there, which I did not get to label exhibit B, which I should have. It's the capital subcommittee recommendation for prioritization of sidewalk project funding. So these are the three that we are, submitting for approval of the prioritization. Two basically combines two of the, different sidewalk projects. So that we're kind of like saying that kind of completes the loop. So the first chart, basically the longer chart is what we were submitted, like this is what we were given, this is the whole shebang of what we were asked to look at. So that's what we actually based our audit on.
Okay, Country Club Drive looks to me like a prime candidate for narrowing the street and adding the sidewalk in the current right of way, or in the current cartway, I think, as some people say. And if we would motion to, and I think, Commissioner Flynn, did I hear correctly at a previous commission discussion? Yeah, Commissioner
Grella.
Commissioner
has
Grella
brought this
said
up.
he hoped to be here today, but it looks like he isn't.
Yes, he has, Commissioner Grella has brought up that he has spoken with residents on Country Club, and they are interested in seeing the road narrowed and using within the existing street space.
I was under the impression part of it was to save the street trees that, like,
yes,
as Seth just mentioned. So if we recommend this out of the gate and the commission takes it up, would that jeopardize doing anything a little fancier like that on Country Club? Because other than that, I'm fine with the.
But where do the funds go towards that, I guess? I mean, if we make that recommendation, do these funds have to go specifically to just putting the sidewalks, or can they go into the larger scope if we end up narrowing the road?
I think these dollars were estimated based on putting sidewalks in, so that's the answer to that.
Yeah.
And if you're gonna do something else, we don't have an estimate for that cost. But I would have to assume it's probably at a lower cost if it's using the same space that's already paved, and that would be my guess.
I mean, I can submit this to the group. I was trying to find it. Arlington, Virginia, and other places have done pilot programs, but essentially what you're saying, striping, taking 5 feet, striping it out, marking it, and then they're using flex posts and delineators and like basically a rubber curb stop to make a walking path. And they're doing it because sidewalks are costly, street trees, but in the interim, it narrows the street and provides a shared space to walk. So I'll share that exhibit with the group.
So how, are we talking one way on direction, just one way traffic on the street, or?
Yeah.
Because I would have
mentioned.
I would have concerns about snow removal in wintertime. I don't think Virginia would have as much of an issue with that as.
No, I agree. Although we don't get as much snow, but I think Country Club, the issue with Country Club,
Please.
the issue with Country Club is if it's one way, there isn't a natural like parallel street to also be a responding one way. I think the street is potentially wide enough. You can make it like a yield flow type of street. If we plow to one direction opposite of this walking lane, maybe that's helpful. But then if you have this walking lane, do we have any equipment that can maintain it in a snow condition as well? Or are we relying on salt to kind of spread into that area? And it becomes another issue with the snow removal process.
And wouldn't that be an issue with the sidewalk anyway? I mean,
Plowing it.
well, so because it's in the existing cartway, it's the municipality's responsibility to clear it. Is that as opposed to the sidewalk, which we cross our fingers.
We don't have that situation now. Yeah, when we plow the snow, some of the snow is gonna get on the sidewalks, and then they call Rudy.
So I'm sure this will come up as part of further studies and analysis. Having I walk and drive that bend just about daily. And I know walking with my kids and my dog, we're always up in the yards on the stone paths. I have very real concerns about fitting 2 vehicles in that bend and not having them crash head on. but again,
And you
that's from my
probably-
own experience of walking that on a daily basis with my dog.
And then there's typically somebody that parks in that radius there, in that area too, so you'd probably have to post that as no parking as well. Just to.
So one way to me would probably be the only solution.
That was my question, is the problem two-way traffic or is the problem two-way traffic plus parking? If it were,
There's no way you could fit 3 vehicles through there.
Yeah.
If you have a parked car, you have to wait till the one vehicle gets through and passes.
okay.
There's no way 3 vehicles fit there.
I think
Not
the
damage.
short of this is that if we're gonna look at country club, it sounds like, and there is discussion about alternatives, but it sounds like they need to be explored. Right, in more depth, probably, and I need to circle around with Commissioner Grella on, is this just a casual conversation with the existing residents, or is this an active discussion that needs to be formalized before we take like specific action?
And I misspoke. I was thinking of the other side of Country Club heading in the other direction. I think this portion of Country Club could be one way because you do have a parallel route in Audubon.
I would say one way from Audubon towards Sleepy Hollow, because the more natural flow of traffic to get out of that neighborhood is actually to make the right on Sleepy Hollow and go up Fruithurst.
Yep.
And then make the left.
Let me interject. The Audubon is private between Country Club and Sleepy Hollow, so we couldn't really use.
There's honestly really, there's not that many cars that use that street.
No, I understand that, but I just want to make sure everybody's clear that that's a private section there and those residents don't want a lot of traffic coming through there. We had issues in the past when there's been some
Right.
detours.
You really got the short
Which
end of the
could
stick.
force more.
I'm sorry.
This would definitely force more.
It would force more, yeah, but typically if you're coming from McNeely Road and heading towards Castle Shannon Boulevard, you're either going up Country Club or you're going up Fruithurst.
Right.
So with this in mind, we could amend our recommendation, at least initially, to just be the first and second, the Kelso, and then the Greenhurst project. I can make a motion.
Oh,
I'm not, and don't get me wrong, I'm not against the.
No.
I'm just thinking through my own experience of walking through there.
it seems like there's more network analysis needed out in that area. Like, I mean, once again, it's an area where you've got,
Impact, yeah.
well, you've got crosswalks in Sleepy Hollow and Country Club, crosswalks to nowhere. And then you see, I mean, a lot of our folks observe, like, there's kids making choices and Aaron, your family's making choices.
Some paths are
Yeah,
the preferred
I mean,
route, I mean,
I get it.
around the tree.
So I hate kicking it down the road, but I think to understand, okay, one way, I don't want to put the municipality in it, what is the ballpark cost to Audubon? But then once you take on a private road, every other private road owner is gonna want you to have it. I see the commissioner shaking his head. You know, I wonder how many of those people knew that was private road when they bought their house, but probably none of them. Yeah, I
Good
think,
question, Seth, to
Yeah, go
Erin, since you walk that regularly. When I went over there to observe, I went at dismissal time and I was appalled at the situation there. And I was curious as to why there was one crossing guard and why that crossing guard was situated at the bottom of Country Club. Is there a more, and maybe it would add too much time, but those parallel Fruithurst or I guess Audubon, you said was private. If we thought about adding sidewalk, changing the route, changing where the crossing guard was stationed, is there a better route that we could designate for kids, or would they naturally just try to
They're
keep
gonna
going
naturally
down?
go to Country Club.
Okay,
That's
so-
the most direct route.
Okay,
And it's honestly, to get out of that neighborhood, it's the least steep hill.
okay,
So it sort of naturally becomes the route.
okay.
would the person with their truck on the existing sidewalk stop parking on it if we had sidewalk to the
Which one is
residents?
that?
I don't know, it's at the top. I hope it's not your F-150 on.
I don't even have 150. I know what you're talking about. He actually added a parking pad, so that no longer happens.
How is that in the winter to navigate that hill through people's yards?
Dicey.
Yeah.
Yes, I mean, obviously, they're just stones that go up through the mulch typically. And you sort of are walking around the giant trees, so difficult. Usually the kids, to be honest, and this is the great advantage of the crossing guard, he actually just retired after last school year. but he passed along the knowledge. He keeps the kids in a big group, so they actually all go together. He has them
Okay.
assemble at the corner of Sleepy
Oh.
Hollow and
Little
Country
duck
Club.
sequence.
And then they travel in a big group up around the bend, so it's a mass of them
Like a
as
mass,
opposed to
yeah.
one-offs, yeah.
I also see it's a blind child area.
So there's actually, and I don't know of a child, I know of an adult that lives right on the bend. So I don't know if they don't have blind adult signs and they put up blind adult, or I know there is a blind adult or a visually challenged adult, I don't know if blind is the correct term, but yeah, he lives right on the bend on the inner side.
The trees, I think that's the real resistance. I mean, the trees are fantastic and they look like they're in relatively good condition too. And I believe in sidewalks, so it's like to lose those trees that are doing their job should be slowing it down. Honestly, one way right now without sidewalks would probably change the paradigm a little bit. But yeah, so
You have a motion on the table.
yes. But there was a question about amended definition.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm fine if we have the ability to amend our recommendation. I mean, I would say that Kelso and Greenhurst are still our top two priorities. And we're very aligned on that, with Country Club seeming like it needs a little further evaluation.
And our understanding was Woodland was funded, or that's why we didn't talk about Woodland.
And Sleepy Hollow, was there something with Sleepy Hollow as well? That's
Probably about 15 years ago, that was studied, looked at, and the residents didn't want that to happen.
It definitely was lower on our priority list. And honestly, like Kelso, Greenhurst, Lakemont, they were we were all very much in agreement.
Yeah, the majority, or I don't know if it was the majority, but residents were opposed to installing the sidewalks on the lower section from like Country Club all the way down to the line with Castle Shannon Borough. And there are some spotty properties through there that have sidewalks. I think Briarwood
Down
has
to the
sidewalks.
line,
Yeah, I think-
does have sidewalks, but not, I think one house
St. Winter.
Yeah,
Yeah.
going towards Country Club has one, but then it ends.
Yeah,
Is that the one where they're like just paving stones too somewhere?
there could be a few scattered.
Yeah, there's a couple of those.
I mean, I think hearing that out, I would, I think it's a budget process, right? Like, the active transportation plan should kick off before construction season. I know we're putting a lot on it, but I'm wondering if we can come up with some ideas through that process to have that budget money earmarked, because I think it's a need area, and
This is a budget process,
Yeah.
right? Commission is ultimately gonna make a decision.
Right.
I would prioritize if Kelso's one,
Yeah.
and the second one, right, the Greenhurst Lakemont is two,
Yeah.
and Country Club is 3. 1, 2, 3.
yep.
Okay.
Because it's all gonna change, and people can come advocate at the budget meetings.
Agree.
Any other comments? Those in favor? All in favor? Are we all in favor?
What are we, so are we back to the original proposal, or are we doing the amended? proposal?
We're back to the
three.
original.
Okay, that's good. Just making sure.
Yep, sorry. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion passes. Thank you.
I'll update this. So procedurally, like, what's the best thing for me to do, for me to update this and send this
Forward
to
to me
you?
if I have any questions, then I'll let you
Okay.
know.
Like I said, let me revise it. There's a couple things, so fix it.
And the next one, the policy subcommittee hasn't met, and there was a little confusion on if we had officially staffed it up, but my understanding is that we did. It's in the minutes from last month. So the policy and design subcommittee intent there is to review existing policies, traffic calming, understand and react to the active transportation plan, but any other, including other efforts. So my full understanding is we cannot have a quorum, so no more than 4 can attend these subcommittee meetings.
No more than 4 board members.
Right,
You can have.
correct.
Citizens, yeah.
And I do count it even as ex officio towards that quorum number, correct? So, we do have a meeting planned for, I believe, next Monday, Marty? Tuesday?
What?
You're wrong.
I thought it was Monday.
I have it on my calendar as Monday.
It's Monday.
Monday at 6:30, we are meeting with the policy subcommittee, and that's gonna include the policy Mr. Basic has brought forward previously as well, and look at those, and then similar to the capital budget subcommittee, bring those recommendations to the board and share those thoughts and ideas. So no meetings this month,
I think it's,
or the previous month.
the meeting is tentatively, digital only. Is there any rule against that? Do we need to meet in person? Okay,
All right.
I do prefer meeting in person, but I'm not gonna be a party member.
So, old business subcommittee discussion, I think this was a request from John. I don't know if we rectified that discussion, but I know we have it in the meeting.
That's a great segue.
Yeah.
So we created the policy board, and also kind of poo-pooed a couple of the other ideas that, we created it on a day we just barely had a quorum. So I guess, policy is currently, subcommittee, the policy subcommittee is at 3 people, 2 board members and a citizen. So I would regard the ideal size for that to be like 3 to 5 people, so we're at the lower end of that. So if anyone who wasn't here last month wants to join in, there'll be a lot of reading to do. I think yeah, so that was kind of is anyone interested, and if so, I guess propose a few members.
Yeah, I mean, we can share, I definitely raise your hand or, give your piece if you're interested. There's a lot of material previously, but I know at the same time, the idea is to create some new material similar to Mr. Basic's recommendation. And obviously, I think there'll be a lot of new material from the active transportation plan to respond to as well. So not that everything before us was done wrong, but I think it's fine to update it and acknowledge that work and go from there. Go ahead, Linus, you're interested.
Call me Linus?
No, sorry.
Come on.
Go ahead.
No, I'm going.
Yeah, you want to go? Gotcha. I did not mean it.
Well, and just as a point of reference, again, and one that just popped in my head while you guys were talking, or actually while Rudy was talking, was they painting the stop bars. That is Rudy's process now. That is not a policy. It could be a policy, right? There are low, easy wins there, but need horsepower. So, in so much as anybody's willing to even spend, a little time, right, there is opportunity to push some things forward that then the board could look at. So they don't have to be big, meaty, like re-engineer the whole traffic pattern of the municipality. There can be small stuff too. So don't feel like it has to be so weighty that you get intimidated by it.
So, Mr. Friedman, you would like to join the board? Or you're not Justice. Why am I seeing
I don't know.
I'm mixing it up. Sorry, Justice. Confusing you and Linus. Justice, I will add you to our communication.
Do we need to vote on that?
No, I don't think so. Any other further subcommittee discussion?
Oh, yes. So, I mean, I'm on board. So at the previous meeting, we said that we were kind of in agreement that the idea of an outreach subcommittee was not necessary, and a student mobility committee was kind of redundant to the other stuff. However, some people who weren't at that meeting placed their names as interested. So I guess if anyone who did wants to make a case for that, we should, I don't know.
For which one, Sean? For the student one or the?
I mean, they were, yeah, for some version of those. We currently have the budget and the
policy. So with the
policy.
capital.
We were, there's interest in like an infrastructure subcommittee or something, but we haven't created that yet. There is interest, but we kind of, somebody probably, I'm assuming Seth labeled student mobility committee tabled, outreach tabled, so.
Yeah, and I think part of that discussion was, we're a board, it's a lot to take on for outreach, but I do know we also have 9 folks here, and then I want, you know, folks to feel like they're participating and engaging, so there's certainly room for more. You know, when we limit ourselves to 4 on each subcommittee, and I typically take up 1. For the time being, I want these to become something, or I think we want these to become something, but we also don't want to, I think, do things beyond the scope of what the board can actually accomplish, and I think outreach is difficult for a board to accomplish. And then even student mobility, it's great to have a student liaison, and happy to let Vivian take things back to the school and vice versa, but it just seemed like a lot for us to take on as a board. I know we had representation from the schools, but I would love to have more things come here, so happy to hear more thoughts. It seemed like there's a lot to dig into, specifically on the policy side. Capital budget's going to be crucial going forward and responding to the active transportation plan. So I think there's room for more, but it seemed like a good start for now. And we're happy to hear other thoughts.
You said the capital budget committee is looking.
No.
No.
Oh,
Please.
okay. I'm happy to be part
I'll
of that
take you.
subcommittee, yeah. I'm happy to be part of that.
And I mean, we can more publicly share these, you know, when we're meeting and let folks know. Just don't want to overextend the quorum or anything like that, but there will be more to come. I know Aaron would love to tap into your background here and also with your experience at CMU, wherever you're willing to give up your time or offer your time.
I noticed, and were you referring to the same thing I saw in the minutes, because I did miss the last meeting, a street design subcommittee? Would that be similar to infrastructure?
Here's policy and policy design, yeah.
That.
Yeah.
But that's an area where that will hopefully grow, especially out of the active transportation plan, right?
Yeah.
Because we want to get the typologies kind of formalized with the active transportation plan. We have them now, but we want to get more granularity. But then the thought is that at that point, then we start to formalize when we get, and actually Rudy, I did ask you for the 3 to 5 years.
Right, we're working on that.
All right, so we'll ask for 3 to 5 years on the road plan, road reconstruction, so that the street design subcommittee can start picking streets and saying, okay, this is the typology, this is what it is, let's learn about it, let's explore what our toolkit is on this street, let's talk to the residents of the street and come up with a design. It could be just repave it, but it could be any number of other things depending on the typology and what's allowed on that street. So it's more about facilitating. But again, we don't really have the infrastructure there yet, the organizational infrastructure to do that. So we want to kind of hold that off.
Right. Moving into new business. So I think we received the Kelso Road petition at the last meeting, correct?
Was that last meeting? Yeah, I think so. 2 meetings ago.
No, I thought it was last.
I think it's under new business in the notes.
Yeah, I think it was last meeting.
Or wait, I'm sorry, it's new business.
I guess there's an update to Kelso Road that we needed to respond to. Is there an update to Kelso Road? Because I'm hoping we're responding to it via recommending sidewalks be put on Kelso Road, but I don't know if there's an update on that front. It's a state road, so I mean, that was part of the budget subcommittee discussion. There's only so much we can do right now because PennDOT doesn't have an active paving project. It doesn't have, there isn't a major utility project. Our opportunity for change really exists with the sidewalks at this juncture.
Yeah, I don't have any updates on it.
What was the petition? Was there something specific that was being asked other than like new compared to?
I think they just signed they had a petition.
I
think one of the recommendations was, at a minimum, paint the crosswalk with piano keys and make sure the signs are there for the crossing, and they are.
Didn't they want the flashing sign as well? I thought that was.
The first preference was a stop sign. And not a stop sign, it was the flashing lights.
Yes.
They had like a first priority, second priority, third priority. And I think the repainting what existed to make it brighter was like the third priority. And so what I think their first choice would be stop sign at that crosswalk. Or lights. Which I actually think lights are better because they're more visible.
The
Like the ones that they just-
rectangular
Like
reflective
the ones
beacon.
in Washington Road, those ones, I think.
Washington Road, yeah, like the crosswalk signal lights that they just put down, yeah, on Cedar
Salem.
Salem lights. They're not perfect, people still blow through them in front of Washington Elementary, but I feel like it carries more weight than a stop sign, especially on a high traffic road like Kelso.
Rudy, what was the cost of just the flashing light signage part of
On Cedar?
Cedar?
20
grand.
Yeah,
20,000.
20 grand, we put them in ourselves, yeah, so there was no installation.
And the one on Kelso is gonna have to go through PennDOT approval.
That one did too.
Oh,
Yeah, because technically it's a
It's a
traffic
Washington
signal,
Road,
so
yeah.
Yeah.
it has a permit even though it's not a state road.
I guess before we did any of that, did it need to have some data collection behind it, or they already did the data
I
collection?
mean, there's a,
Yeah.
you know, there's no sidewalks there to start with, so if you don't have sidewalks, what are you crossing to or warning
Yeah.
for? And then I don't think we have I think we have some observations, observed data of how many are crossing at that, and there's not a whole lot, it's only a handful, so. So I think that would probably be step one, you know, and more formally than just the windshield survey that was done, more or less, so.
I do recall one other thing they had mentioned as a request, and I've seen these added on outside of the ice castle, the crosswalks. They're like the little signs, the crosswalk signs. They have them at the high school too. Is there something that we could, I feel like those would be great in front of Washington Elementary. I think at Kelso, they said, could we get one of those? What are they called?
They're just the yield to pedestrians.
Sit on the double yellow.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Is there an approval process for those?
I think there's not an approval process, but you can request them through your local representative. There's a little one-page flyer, I'll find it and send it to you. Frankly speaking, what happens with those is they get destroyed real quickly.
We used to have them done at Cedar and Salem and Hollycrest.
They can take one good hit from a vehicle and it's useless anymore, especially on a road like 19 or like Washington Road.
I'm just wondering, even for like mornings for the crosswalk in front of Washington Elementary, I know we have the flashing lights, but even just.
I think we had those there before the crossing, there before the flashing crosswalk sign.
Yeah.
The problem was putting our crossing guards at risk of dragging those out into the street because they're not light. You know, the bases on those are thick rubber, you know, so they're not heavy. We have foldable ones at some other intersections that crossing guards do put out.
And then sometimes where you
Shady
put
Drive
them,
East, the
yeah.
Castle Shannon Boulevard is an example. They're like the sandwich board signs and they chain them to the telephone pole whenever they're not in use, so.
Yeah, there's one on, Bower Hill.
Yeah,
Bower
at
Hill,
least they put it out
Yeah.
on Bower Hill and Ralston.
Those are so heavy too. And if you're short, they're awkward to like try and pick up. So we have them that say don't block the driveway too, and they get run over.
We have some at Jefferson, I think, at Ruth, maybe.
Yes.
Yeah, so you.
I mean, I think the ones at Kelso would get hit and run over and destroyed pretty quickly, and Washington Road too. That doesn't mean they aren't needed, but it's like watching the flex post at, the Dukes of Hazzard jump at Arden. I'm like, how do you not, this person's in a BMW sedan, I'm like, how do you not see, the pole is taller than your car, what are you looking at? And I just watch them drive over that.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, so I think starting with sidewalks, a deeper analysis through the active transportation plan would be my suggestion, but.
So I pulled the petition up, which is available to everyone on the team site, so it's in that folder. And it's just basically, it says this is a petition to make Kelso and Pembroke crosswalks safer. That's all it is.
Sidewalks will help.
Yeah.
That's on the commission at this point. So I think we, next, interboard liaison, interboard liaison. This is something that came up as well in the subcommittee discussion, but this is more so, liaising with planning commission, liaising with some others. John, do you want to speak to that a little bit, or what your thought process was?
I mean, yeah, I mean, theoretically, any of us can go to any other board meeting as a citizen, chime in. So I'm not really sure what specific benefits that being the official liaison has, in terms of helping interboard communication, maybe just so that it's on your calendar and you're attending. I think Paul put his name down for something, and so it's, he's not here right now. I don't know if, I meant to print out the list of that, I meant to print out that list, but apparently I printed out something else twice instead. So I don't remember if there was another name or not.
Commissioner, can you speak to the effectiveness of the liaisons with the other boards? I mean, I know in EDC time, we usually had somebody from planning just kind of sit in, but.
Yeah, there was a formal process in the past.
Yeah.
I would definitely encourage, I mean, we have a finance committee board member who is here, right? So there is effectively a liaison to the finance committee just because, someone is interested. In so much as you have a capacity and a willingness. I think it's useful, especially the advisory boards. Again, the other boards are more statutory. They're going through process more than they are discussion. So I don't know if those are worth necessarily spending the time, but so one of your points was the outreach. I will just tell you, my rule of thumb is that these are advisory boards. They are not outreach boards. And in so much as the community relations board wants to do a lot of outreach, I am even discouraging them. Again, I, as one individual commissioner, don't represent the municipality. I am one person, even though I get a vote at commission. So we have to be thoughtful about how you facilitate outreach and what outreach is, because this is a municipal function, not, a board function. But, how do we understand the interplay between these different groups, right? Again, and I think especially mobility and economic development, resiliency, right? Sustainability, those are topics that go hand in hand. So if someone wanted to go to the resiliency board, I think that would be a great one. Obviously there's already someone from finance coming here. He could probably speak to one of you as to whether that would be useful or not. Community relations, I don't know that I see an immediate line of sight on that one, unless, there is like specific reason to want to, talk about how do we engage residents from a mobility perspective. And if you see a way for them to engage on that topic, they are talking I won't speak to what their topics are. I haven't specifically been to a CRB meeting lately. What board am I missing? Community relations, finance. Parks and Rec. Parks and Rec. Yeah, there's mobility topics there. When I was liaison to the Parks and Rec board, I was pushing them to actively think about a trail design policy. Because again, that's part of our transportation network, if we think about it properly. If you go look at Bird Park, there are a few trails that are maintained at a level that you could conceivably think of it as a thoroughfare, but most of those trails are not. They are volunteer trails. So is there overlap there? Yeah, sure, of course there is.
The main one is for children to go to.
Right.
Markham.
Yeah.
So it's definitely used.
Right.
It's a walk.
Right, but not ADA accessible, not right. So again, there are overlaps, clearly. I think it's more a question of, is this something that you guys would want to do on a formal basis versus is this just something that you as individuals want to take a particular interest in an area and engage with some of those board members? But that's up to you. I won't ask more than we are already asking from a commission perspective.
If other people are like gluttons for punishment, I like to listen to the recordings as I commute online, inclusive of commission. I am appreciative of all the recordings being online because it's a nice way to find out if it was a meeting I should have attended or need to follow up or shoot some emails to commissioners. Yeah, I guess I see a need for formalization just yet, but I do think with zoning potentially being taken up by the planning board. And also the active transportation plan, I hope we're involved and I hope the other boards are involved because it's gonna touch everyone, inclusive of our staff in terms of emergency services and our DPW. So I think that's a real point to find out if we need to go message the active transportation plan if we believe in that, and I hope so. But I think I don't see anything just yet, but I'm happy to hear other thoughts there.
I do not think I'm interested in being a liaison because I think I'm already committing myself to a lot of stuff here. But does being a liaison get you a spot on the agenda, like a dedicated spot on the agenda?
That would be up to that board.
Okay.
I mean, if you guys voted you wanted to do this, right, we could obviously facilitate with the other boards and say there is a formal request to have a spot, but.
Personally, I see it more as we get more into the meat of things and something comes up that we feel that there's a synergy with another board. At that point, I think then we would make a formal request to get on the agenda of that other board as a liaison. That's how I view it.
I mean, kind of to what Commissioner Flynn said, there are a ton of synergies. Like what the resiliency board is like, that is sustainability and business together. So mobility would ideally have a ton of crosstalk with them, and transportation touches everything really. So I know I said I'm interested in that zoning code stuff because I've looked into the zoning code before, and there are a few things in there I regard as head scratchers. Some are mobility related, some aren't.
Is there an all boards like listserv where we could say, hey, or let folks know that mobility is staffed up, or we're staffing up 2 subcommittees? Maybe that's where the participation can start, or request of participation, or if there's desire from folks, request participation at that juncture. Because I think that's where, like, the meetings are processed, that's where we're gonna dig into some of these policies, like, hey, resilience, what are you talking about? If we do this policy, we can really do a mode shift. I think that was a question that just popped in my head, Beth. We wanted to know if the schools track mode share. How are they tracking how people come and go to the schools? If you don't track it, we can't change it. Or you may be able to change it, but you can't see if we were successful with change. So that would be a great thing from the resiliency board. Like, hey, if we can get 10% more people walking to schools, what does that do for our community? And I think that's where we can maybe get the participation at first before we liaison with the boards. That's a lot of stuff I just said, so.
Well, the Zoom's always really easy too, so you're
Yeah.
at dinner or whatever, zoom in on,
Yep.
you're there. They're all Zoom.
Yeah, I'm appreciative of that functionality, certainly.
Exactly.
You can always use public comment.
Yeah.
You can always sign up for public comment. It's really easy. And this board gets a lot more public comment than many do. So they would welcome your.
So I just asked this question about the policy, the subcommittees. Are the liaisons positions that Seth can just say, yeah, go ahead, or is it something we vote on?
Just assigned, right? Or interest, really.
Yeah, it's just really just interest. Yeah, whatever. It's up to you guys. I don't think you need a formal action. It's just the creation of the subcommittees that needs the formal action.
Yeah, if people want to go to other boards, feel free. I'm not gonna dictate that you need to go or not, just because I know all of us are tapped out for time, so. I guess, the only request I would make is if you attend one and there's something of note, let us know, and we can highlight that in chairperson's report or otherwise, or put it on the actual agenda. I think that's the thing we'd like to do. And I'll try to start putting out requests ahead of Rudy's request to try to get the agenda set up, and that would be a good place. Hey, I attended planning commission. I'd like to talk about X, or there's new developments doing this.
Well, you might just update the standing agenda to have a C always, or whatever the letter becomes at the end that is all other board. Yeah.
Okay.
Subcommittees. Or boards and committees.
Okay. Oh, sorry, we've got one that I missed. 224 Dell Avenue. Karen Russo.
Oh, yeah.
My apologies.
I don't know, do I come up, do I?
Yeah, come on up to the front.
Dell Avenue is kind of like a crossroad between McFarland and Beverly. And we're personally having, I'm sorry.
The voting.
Oh, I didn't see that. I've never done this, so I just want to plead my case. State your name and address, please. My name is Karen Russo. I live at 224 Dell Avenue, 15216.
Go ahead. Whatever.
Okay, Dell Avenue, as I had mentioned, is a cross street between McFarland and Beverly. So we have an awful lot of traffic in the mornings, in the evenings, whatever. That's not the problem. The problem is becoming a parking issue for us. We have two driveways and there is a telephone pole between our driveways. We back into our driveway and there are many times when we are almost run off the road by people coming up the street because they want to go up the street and we're trying to back in. But the problem has become even more than that. There are people parking across from our street that I have to take 2 or 3 backups to get in my driveway because they park directly across from where my driveway is. And I don't know what to do about it. I had a situation a couple weeks ago where there were 3 cars over there. There were 2 cars on my side. There was a truck at the bottom. I couldn't even get out of the driveway. And I started beeping my horn, but none of my neighbors would come out. So I had to kind of pull out, back up the street to be able to get down the street. And I'm trying to figure out what we have to do. So my husband came up and talked to the police administration and they recommended that we come here and talk to you guys and see if it's possible to get a no parking sign so that we can actually get in our driveway without having to deal with the car sitting directly across from our driveway. Since the 13th of August, I have had 15 cars parked there. In fact, one was this morning.
So you're suggesting a no parking right across the street from your the driveway?
There's not a driveway across from us. It's
Yeah.
just a street. There's a driveway farther up the road. There's a driveway on the other side of the house that sits there. But it seems like everybody wants to park there.
Yeah.
Is it, same cars, neighbors, does it seem, or is it?
Sometimes it is the same cars. Some people have more cars than they have driveways or garages. We have a garage at the back. We keep one of our cars in our garage. We park the other car at the top of the hill because my husband goes to work at 5 o'clock in the morning. But we don't ever park on the street because we know all the problems on that street. So we try to be good neighbors and not cause a problem for anybody else on the street. We had a confrontation a couple weeks ago because somebody parked the car across from me. The lady came to cut my grass. There were 2 cars on my side of the street. There was a car on the other side. I mean, there were 2 cars on the other side of the street. And I asked them to move because they have a driveway that holds 4 cars, plus they have a 2-car garage. And they didn't want to hear about moving. So. Is that street wide enough to have cars parked on both sides and still get through?
One car.
One car.
And that becomes the issue.
Because we end up with cars on both sides of the street. Then we have people that park their cars there all night. So yeah, I have a situation where I came home from my daughter's. I was babysitting. It was 12:30 at night. I came home and there were 2 cars parked directly across from me. So it took me 2 turns to get in my driveway. And that car stayed there all night, one of them. I'm not here, believe me, I don't want to have any issues. I just want to solve my problem so that we can get in and out of our driveway.
Later, so that I can look in Google Street View and get a better visual of the situation. Could you state your house number again?
Sure, 224.
Okay, thank you.
Do people try to maybe commuters that park on your street that don't live on it?
No,
No.
I don't think we really have commuters.
Okay.
No, I mean, again, I think when somebody, the car today, their driveway was empty all day long. They were sitting right in front of my house. So that, you know, again, I wasn't going out. My husband wasn't home from work yet, but don't understand if you have a driveway, why you wouldn't put your car in your driveway because of the fact that it is a very busy street. And there are times when there's two cars waiting up here to get down through the street because there's one car up here coming up the street because there's cars parked on both sides.
Right.
So it becomes a one-lane street.
The telephone pole's not doing you any favors either. That's a tough,
Yeah.
that is a tough turn forward or backwards.
Yes.
It's probably easier
And
backwards,
and
but
if I do go in forwards,
Yeah.
it's, you can't even get out
No.
because nobody's gonna stop coming up or down the street. I
Uh-huh.
mean, you know, it's a no-win situation.
so Dell has been like in my head for a long time because it's faster than it should be. It's narrower than a lot of our other residential streets. It looks like 23 feet on Google. I don't know if it's
22 stand typical.
22, but I know a lot of our other streets are 26, 27. I think.
Yeah, it is a narrow street. That's what I'm saying. Sometimes if the car, and today when I came up, there was a car parked on each side of the street farther up from me, but it was difficult for cars to get through. I have a small car, but yeah, that road gets very narrow when you
North
go.
Meadow Cross one way and it's like 26, 27 feet. And then we've got a two-way on Dell that's 22 feet. I think it's a bigger issue. We've looked at the Kenmont's one way, North Meadow Cross one way. Edward is fast. Dell is fast.
And these are all cut throughs.
It's all people
Yeah,
trying to beat the
cross
lights.
streets, there's no question. Yeah.
A lot of traffic from Dormont over to on Dell to Beverly because you're going between the business districts, or people are trying to beat West Liberty. I think this is definitely one that's gonna come up on the active transportation plan. What should happen with Dell? Should we do any one way? Should we do anything else? I don't think we have a solution for you today because it's kind of a larger network.
This might be a tactic, more kind of short term, to your point,
Yeah.
Brian, is to see, this gentleman right here to my right is the traffic engineer. He might just need to take a look at it and make a recommendation to the manager, the municipal manager, as to whether that would be viable or not. And make that judgment as opposed to the board needing to make a formal action. But it's good that you came here, right, just so that we are aware that this is an issue on Dell. But I will ask that the staff liaisons, talk to the manager and see if it's something that they're comfortable recommending. At least, and see how we can get and move forward and then get back to you.
Okay.
Which I think we assume we have your information, at least an email address.
Is your phone number on there, Matt?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Mhm.
Perfect.
Yeah. I work from home all day, so I'm home.
Okay.
So if somebody needs to come by or whatever, I mean.
Yeah, I think first thing we need to take a look at it in the field for sure. Honestly.
Okay,
Thanks.
thank you.
Thank you, Karen.
Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming. So our next meeting will be Tuesday, October 1st, and go ahead.
Didn't make it onto the agenda, but I wanted to recap and introduce the Scrubgrass Road
Oh, excellent.
meeting that we had a couple of weeks back.
Thanks for
I
coming.
think it was actually the night after this meeting. There was a lot of discussion at that meeting, we had Seth was there, I think Charlotte was there, John was there, right? Commissioner Flynn was there. There was a lot of conversation about options, short-term, long-term, low cost, high cost. And ultimately where we landed coming out of that meeting was partial consensus from the neighborhood on implementing short-term, low cost improvements. That they'd be looking to have a recommendation come out of this board potentially next month as budgets are being passed. What we're doing now is refining those options. And we're gonna have a detailed cost estimate for what that will be. I'll share with a presentation next month at this meeting for you guys to consider, but I at least wanted to introduce and kind of talk through it with the folks who weren't there. I'll share my screen real quick just to kind of go over. Hopefully this works. Essentially, we're talking about from Swallow Hill up to Cochrane. I have 4 exhibits I'll show to you. They're really just kind of chosen. They're just, one's kind of a typical area that would follow the whole road and areas that are like that. One, the one that I left here, this is where the stairs come down from Old Hickory. If you didn't even know they were there, there's a staircase that comes down from there. And then there's really no marked crosswalk or anything, but you have to cross because there's no sidewalks on the south side of the road. The next exhibit I'll show you is just gonna be an area that just kind of shows what the markings would look like along the majority of the road, where it has all the homes and driveways are on the northern side of the road. The third exhibit is how we would propose to treat the intersection with Elm Spring and Old Hickory, and then how we would transition coming off of Cochran Road to get to this new kind of typical section. So all of these improvements are really pavement marking and signage based, no real hardscape. We talked about things like speed humps and bump outs and, you know, constructing those types of things. Those have a much higher cost. And it seemed that the group of neighbors, as well as input from folks from this board, that this kind of road, this section of road from Cochran to Swallow Hill really kind of fits into that. What's the active transportation plan going to come up with for what a road wants to look like? So a lot of the conversation about the higher cost long-term things, it made sense to kind of push those off till the active transportation plan comes in. And you guys can take a closer look at some of those things, you know, based on recommendations that come out of that plan. So what did come out of the neighborhood was, you know, hopefully looking to have something implemented next year that would, I'll just kind of jump to the one. This is just a typical area. So if I zoom in right now, it's a 30-foot wide cartway, curb to curb. The southern curb line, that lane is about 13 feet wide. And then the northern curb lane, which is where all the homes and driveways are, is 17 feet wide. Now, there's parking permitted on that side, so there wants to be a parking lane there, but everybody over there has driveways. And the only time you really ever see vehicles there is maybe a contractor's there doing work on a home, or if somebody's having a party or something like that. But for the most part, if you drove up and down this road, you're not going to encounter any vehicles parked on the northern side. So essentially you have this 17-foot wide lane with a 25-mile-per-hour speed limit. Folks are certainly going much faster than that. I think our data showed 30, 36, 37 mile per hour, 85th percentile speeds, because it's comfortable to do so. They may not even realize they're going that fast, but it's just so wide and open that it becomes easy to do. So the general treatment would be to take that same curb to curb parkway width and define it and narrow those lanes down a little bit more and define the parking lane. So what you're seeing here is basically these would be white lines that would be delineated. We would offset kind of each parking lane from each driveway by 5 feet, because that's what the ordinance says. You can't park within 5 feet of a driveway. And then we would make the lanes from the curb to the center of the double yellow 11 feet, but that's really an effective 10.5-foot lane in each direction, because the double yellow line is actually a foot wide. So that treatment is what the neighborhood would like to see implemented next year, to effectively squeeze things down, slow traffic down that way, and push them further away from the curb or from the parking lane, to solve some of that speeding issue that is comfortable for folks. Going back to the first exhibit, the staircase that comes down from Old Hickory. Right now, there's nothing there. You come down those staircases, you have to cross. And then there's only sidewalk on the north side going towards Cochran. There's no sidewalk on the south side for this first gap here. There's guide rail along here. I think there's a big culvert, a stream that kind of runs along there. So there's a gap in the sidewalk there. But essentially what we'll be looking to do here is mark that with the piano key marking. Take advantage of the parking lane in this area, because there are no homes right here, and create a bump out to shorten that crossing. Now, whether that's a hardscape bump out where it's a curb with a new ramp there, which, although I don't know why you would need an ADA ramp coming from the stairs, but I think we would have to put it in if we did that. Or is it create the bump out with delineators, temporary stuff, along with the paint, similar to what you're seeing throughout the city of Pittsburgh, to kind of create that effect of a bump out, but without the cost and expense of the hardscape construction. And then you kind of get evaluated to see if it's serving the purpose that you want it to serve. So pavement marking, signage, yield lines, pedestrian crossing ahead signs there. This is, again, your typical section for most of it. At the intersection, the same thing. Create that parking lane up essentially to where the stop bars are now. Put piano key markings on all 4 approaches. Right now, I think there's just crosswalks crossing Scrubgrass itself. So just more of that visual delineation, squeezing the lanes down again to 10.5 effective feet. put some yield lines in, put some tracers in to keep people in their lanes. So that, again, mostly pavement marking and signage improvements. There was also some discussion, which I'll have some options next week about, one of the options was to create that physical bump out on the parking side. So it would squeeze these, similar to what we just did on at Cedar Salem, right? So it'd be that same thing, but there was discussion about doing that again with lower cost, like the white delineators and pavement markings, and kind of creating a same effect to get a feel to see if it's actually serving its purpose before you spend the hardscape dollars. So that'll be like in this area and down at the crossing at the bottom of the stairs, there'll be kind of two options for you guys to discuss next month and kind of talk through. I'll have costs associated with each and ultimately coming out of the board, looking for a recommendation to get to the commission as they consider budgets for next year. And then the last one is just really how we would transition it. It is wider up here. This kind of hatched out bulb and these tracers were put in a few years back. That came out of the traffic board. It used to just be a double yellow line that went up. And this right turn, they were kind of swinging out into the oncoming lanes. So some of that stuff was done there. It wants to be this wide up here just because of the angle of the intersection. So this is just really just showing how you would kind of go from that intersection area, transition it down to that typical section where you have your 11-foot lanes and your parking. My computer locked up on me because the battery died.
Yes. So my request.
It's still showing, but.
Yeah, I know, right? I'm impressed. Before it disappears.
Yeah.
On the typical section.
Yeah.
Could you, not just do parking, paint, but also do some some flex post bump outs periodically?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not opposed to doing the hardscape crosswalk. But I would be interested to see what it might do to add some of the flex post bump outs periodically.
Yeah.
Just to
Like
create
we were showing them
more.
as bump outs in different areas.
Right, yeah, just to, cause yeah, a painted line is great, but all of a sudden there's actually something there. Yeah, I know, Rudy, it's harder to.
Good place to put snow, Rudy.
Yeah, you put snow in those spots.
Be a show of hands, who has driven the snow?
But yeah, some of those, right, I mean, maybe not a lot, but just something to create some visual breaks in that whole stretch. I understand the paint helps, but is there some additional opportunities to create those visual breaks?
Why stop at flex post? A couple trees inside the curb lines.
That's right, yeah.
With a nice stormwater treatment.
Yeah.
My notes say that the mood of the room was that the residents really liked the idea of bump outs. And then when we started talking about cheaper, low cost alternatives, I assumed, and maybe some of the residents assumed that was paint or flex post bump outs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was my recollection.
There were like 3 bullet points to bring up after that, if you're done.
Say it again. Yeah.
Well, from a plowing standpoint, I mean, paint's always the best. Putting up anything that's gonna be obstructive and then not plowing that street is not gonna be friendly to the residents either, so.
We've seen what happens to flex posts on Overlook and Arden.
Just gotta make them hard. Fill a couple with concrete, it'll.
Which one's filled with concrete?
You don't know.
I drive a lot slower.
I manage a fleet, so that makes me painful, makes me stressed.
Stones in the thousand leaves.
So at that meeting, look, I and the resident sitting next to me, we really both like the idea of just completing that section of sidewalk where it's missing in front of the one house.
Yep.
And it looks like you could do that just by eliminating
parking
parking spots and swooping out.
Yep.
So
I'll add
would
that
be
as
an option?
I'll add that as an option for you guys to discuss and consider.
And I wanted to mention to everyone as a group, based on attending that meeting and also based on what Ms. Russo said, that so this street has big driveways, lots of parking, just like her neighbors did. And it didn't seem like anyone was particularly, like, this is a street with less than one sidewalk average along its length. It didn't seem like anyone was like, oh yeah, we should get rid of the parking and have 2 sidewalks because we all have driveways. There was the story about the neighbors who were blocking everybody because they didn't want to keep cars in their driveway. So I think that's a good thing to keep in mind, that there are some public attitudes about street parking where the street parking is parking, it's basically extra driveway that's paid for by the municipality, and people don't always want to get rid of that even if they don't use it very much. That's all.
Yeah, I thought it was a great meeting, lots of good, feedback from the citizens. They were very active, which is great.
Yeah, I think, yeah, I mean, part of me would be like, well, if it's that wide and the parking isn't needed, could we actually provide an offset from the sidewalk to the street? Because that would be, if we were doing the street over again, you'd love to have that buffer in that street, and actually that's the side of the power lines are on both sides, it looks like. Yeah. So you can't, the ability to get some street trees in there is limited because of the power lines. But I think farther down the road with the complete streets policy, this is a nice interim condition, and if that transportation plan says you should be moving XYZ through here, because it's not due for a full repaving, right? But a full repaving, maybe we can look at, here's some options, and I guess for people in the room, what I hope the active transportation plan says is this is what these streets should be. So then when you go to the public and do a project of a repaving, it's like, well, this is this type of street and these are the types of treatments we get on it. And you're basically pulling from a menu at that point, instead of letting, not that the public can't dictate things, but the public will, what you're gonna get at that point. You know what type of street it is and what type of recommendations can come out of it. Yeah, so because I mean, for the engineer and for Rudy, it's like when you leave it all open, because it's technically all open right now, it's hard to know what it should be, but if it's like, this is this type of street, I think it makes everyone's jobs a little bit easier to respond to the public.
And one resident even just simply suggested more 25-mile-per-hour signs. She thought that there weren't enough, but I just thought that would be an easy one, but
I think there's more than
she said her sister didn't even know.
I
don't know.
There's
I didn't do the Frogger thing on that street.
Yeah, it's even some of those parking treatments with the 5-foot offset, maybe putting goring between the driveway and just to, I mean,
yeah,
I'm not always a believer in paint, but I think in this case, it's just a visual aspect there for people in trying to change that paradigm a little bit. It's a good first step.
I don't know to what extent it's artsy versus actually practicable. Has anyone ever seen the 3D paint treatments? Yeah, the shadow.
There's some good ones in the parking garages where it makes that piano key actually pop out like 3D. So
Did you read the follow-up article on that?
Probably that it didn't
Don't
work.
read it. People that weren't familiar with them in the road were actually slamming on their brakes because they thought something was sticking out of the road. They were actually increased. Yeah.
That's perfect. All right, you be in a couple sinkholes. We could put bus in the sinkhole.
Literally just put big blocks in the road and make it real.
All right.
Or can you plow those?
Don't pave it. Don't pave it for a long time, because it slows people down.
Thank you, everyone. I will say our next meeting is Tuesday, October 1st at 6 p.m. And looking for a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor? Thank you all so much.
Thank you, everybody.
Yes, I'm sorry I marked up on some of the.